The written word was very important because it was, you got all those books, the Bible, you've got the different gospels and stuff that people are quite familiar with. Mel Gibson just revealed the Untold story of Jesus, and he found it in a book the West has never been allowed to read. There's something about the written word that's like it's a pretty interesting thing to throw into the mix. Picture a soundstage at Cinecitta Studios in Rome. It is late. Gibson is standing before storyboards that stretch across an entire wall, and the Christ pinned at the center of them is not the Jesus, He is studying a manuscript from the Ethiopian Bible that took 17 centuries to reach him, an account of Jesus that powerful men in Rome spent generations making sure you would never see. Gibson goes dark. In 2004, Mel Gibson directed The Passion of the Christ shot in Aramaic, Latin, and Hebrew. No Hollywood compromises. It depicted the final 12 hours of Jesus' life with a brutality that left theaters shaken. Audiences called it the most unflinching portrayal of Christ's suffering ever committed to film. It earned over $600 million worldwide, making it the highest grossing R-rated film in American history for nearly 2 decades. But Gibson has said repeatedly, publicly, insistently, that The Passion only told the first half of the story. For more than 20 years he has been developing the sequel. He calls it the project that haunts him, something he could not walk away from even when Hollywood tried to bury his career. It's very ambitious, that's all I'll say. It took a long time to write. It's really ambitious, and it goes from like the fall of the angels to the death of the last apostle. It is now officially titled The Resurrection of the Christ. 2 parts. Lionsgate distribution, $100 million. Production underway at Cinecitta Studios in Rome. Part 1 releases on Good Friday, 2027. Part 2 arrives 40 days later on Ascension Day. Here is what nobody tells you about what Gibson has been describing. In a 2022 interview with the National Catholic Register, he said the film would not follow a linear story line. It would weave the resurrection together with events spanning past, present, and entirely different realms, he said. The story had to begin with the fall of the angels. And to do that, you have to go somewhere else altogether, another realm. Then on the Joe Rogan Experience, he went further. He revealed he was working from 2 scripts, one traditional, the other something described as more like an acid trip. His exact words: you are going into other realms. You are in hell. You are watching the angels fall. And this is where it gets strange. That exact journey, Christ descending through multiple heavens, confronting fallen angels, moving through hell, was already written down nearly 2,000 years ago, not by a filmmaker, not by a modern theologian, by monks and cliff-faced monasteries carved into the mountains of Ethiopia. We read the book by Jared Diamond, Collapse. I read the Mayan Bible, the Popol Vuh, and tried to delve into what they believed and what their civilization was like. And they had concepts as we do of heaven and hell. Gibson did not invent it. He found it, and the proof it was deliberately taken from you is hiding inside a book. Powerful men spent 17 centuries trying to erase the smoking gun. The Book of Enoch was written centuries before the birth of Christ, possibly as early as 300 BCE. For most of Western history, readers were never supposed to see it. But buried inside its pages is a description of a divine figure so specific, so precise in its imagery that the moment you see it, only one question matters. Why did they hide it? Chapter 46 of Enoch describes a figure with a head white like wool, a face filled with grace, surrounded by rivers of fire in a heavenly courtroom. Angels fall to their knees. The wicked are condemned. At the center stands a being of blazing light, passing judgment over all creation. He is called the Son of Man, the Chosen One, the righteous judge. Not a gentle teacher, a being of terrifying cosmic authority. Now look at Revelation 1, written by John of Patmos around 95 AD, centuries after Enoch. His head and hair were white like wool, as white as snow. His eyes were like blazing fire. Both texts describe feet like polished bronze, refined in a furnace. Both speak of Eo, voice like rushing waters. Both describe a sword of authoritative judgment issuing from his mouth. Both portray a face blazing with overwhelming, unbearable light. Picture this: late night at the University of Iowa. Dr. George Nicholsberg sits at his desk with both manuscripts open in front of him. Enoch on the left, Revelation on the right. He has spent decades producing the definitive English commentary on First Enoch. He sets his pen down. The parallels were not suggestive. They were unmistakable. His conclusion: the author of Revelation was not inventing something new. He was echoing a vision that was already ancient by the time John wrote a single word. That stopped him cold. And here is where it gets strange. The Epistle of Jude, which sits in every modern Bible right now, directly quotes the book of Enoch in verses 14 and 15 almost word for word. Jude treats Enoch as authoritative prophecy, standing alongside the Torah and the prophets. Early church fathers, like Tertullian and Irenaeus, quoted it freely and regarded it as genuine revelation. The authors of the New Testament knew Enoch. They quoted Enoch. They treated Enoch as sacred scripture. Then 3 centuries later, powerful men decided ordinary believers were no longer allowed to read it. The only existing full copy we have of First Enoch is a 15th century manuscript, written in a version of Ethiopic. Fragments of different sections in Coptic, Greek, Latin, and Aramaic all exist, although only contain portions of the whole document. In 363 AD, the Council of Laodicea formally rejected it. Copies were destroyed. The text was labeled too dangerous for ordinary hands. That is the Christ Mel Gibson found, the one the council tried to bury. If you want to be here when the rest of what they hid gets cracked open, subscribe now and turn on notifications, because what comes next is the place they could not reach. They didn't get all the copies, and the place the survivors were hidden is exactly where Gibson's research trail leads next. The monk who kept writing. Picture this: 4th century, a cliff face in the tray, mountains of northern Ethiopia. The only way up is a braided rope lowered from above. A monk named Abagarama has climbed it 100 times inside a stone cell lit by a single oil lamp. He is bent over a sheet of parchment, scraped from goat skin, mixing ink from crushed minerals, copying a manuscript. The rest of Christendom is already working to destroy. His hands ache, his eyes burn. He keeps writing. Can you imagine it? They made this just with a hammer and chisel. And this is volcanic rock. If anything is an act of faith, this is. The monastery still exists. The gospel he produced still exists. And what he preserved is the reason Mel Gibson has a film to make it all. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church traces its roots to the 4th century under King Anna of Aksum, making Ethiopia one of the oldest Christian nations on earth. Its scriptures were preserved in Ge'ez, an ancient sacred language that became a Christian literary tradition before Latin or Greek came to dominate the faith. When Islamic expansion swept across North Africa in the 7th century, Ethiopia became a Christian island cut off from the councils, the decrees, the book burnings. That isolation saved everything. High in the Tray Mountains in monasteries, reachable only by ropes and bare hands, monks kept copying. Generation after generation, dim rooms lit by oil lamps, ink mixed from minerals and plants, parchment scraped from animal skins. Others argue it was a strategic move to avoid his enemies. Either way, the church's location, ceiling frescoes, and precious goatskin Bible have attracted worshippers for centuries. Each manuscript took months. Some took years. They did it anyway. What they were preserving was not forbidden. It was the truth as they had always known it. Here is what nobody tells you about how any of this reached the West. Picture a French art historian named Jacques Marier stepping into one of those remote monasteries for the first time. He had traveled to Ethiopia specifically to document early Christian manuscripts, and he was not prepared for what he found. He described it as a physical shock. Full-color illuminations of Christ's life preserved in astonishing condition for over 1,500 years, staring back at him from pages that no outsider had studied in living memory. The Garma Gospels, named for that same Abagarama, were radiocarbonated by a team at Oxford University to between 330 and 660 AD, making them among the oldest illustrated Christian manuscripts known to survive anywhere on Earth. The Ethiopian Bible contains up to 88 books. Compare that to 66 in the Protestant Bible, or 73 in the Catholic version. This isn't a handful of footnotes. This is entire scriptures. The Book of Enoch, the Book of Jubilees, the Ascension of Isaiah, the Book of the Covenant, writings that early Christians read, quoted, and treated as sacred until powerful men in council rooms decided they were too dangerous to leave in ordinary hands. And what those texts say about Jesus is nothing like what the West was told. Archaeologists were surprised to find that whoever collected the Dead Sea Scrolls considered the Book of Enoch to be of vital importance, preserving 11 different manuscripts, including versions never seen in modern times. Gibson has seen it, and the Christ he is preparing to put on screen is unlike anything Christianity has allowed on film. The Christ they buried in Western art and tradition. Jesus is calm, gentle, comforting pale skin, soft eyes, flowing brown hair, the Good Shepherd, the friend of sinners. Those qualities are in the story, but they are not the whole story. The Ethiopian texts reveal something underneath all of that. Something Western Christianity spent centuries softening, editing, and in some cases erasing altogether. In the Ethiopian scriptures, Christ is not merely kind. He is vast, cosmic, overwhelming, both Savior and Judge, healer, and warrior light that comforts and light that blinds. His hair shines like wool lit by the sun. His eyes burn like fire set within crystal. His face blazes brighter than 1,000 suns while still radiating infinite peace. His voice does not just speak. It echoes across realms, shaking mountains, commanding obedience from angels and demons alike. This is not metaphor. This is the original Christian portrait of Christ, carefully preserved in Ethiopia while the rest of the world was handed a softer, safer, more manageable version. One designed not to disturb, designed to keep believers in their seats. And this is where it gets strange. The physical description is just the surface. What the Ethiopian texts say Christ actually taught is far more dangerous to institutional power than anything about what he looked like. In one passage, Jesus declares, "You are not children of dust, but are children of light." Read that again. Traditional Western Christianity hammers one message into every believer from birth. Humanity is fallen, sinful, broken, formed from dust, dependent on outside intervention for salvation, specifically on the church that controls access to it. The Ethiopian teaching shatters this completely. If humans are children of light, if the divine is not distant but already alive inside every soul, then no institution stands between an ordinary person and God. Salvation isn't a gift dispensed through approved channels. It's an awakening to what already exists within. Here is what nobody tells you about why this had to be erased. This is a rare Ethiopian Orthodox Bible manuscript, handwritten in Ethiopia's sacred liturgical language, Ga. It's 52 leaves, 102 pages, carefully preserved and written by the scribes who devoted their very lives to this work. Think about what the medieval church ran on. Tithes, a percentage of every household's income paid to the clergy. Indulgences, payments made in exchange for reduction of punishment after death. Fees for baptism, last rites, burial, confession. Mandatory private disclosure of sins to a priest without whom forgiveness was impossible. The entire financial architecture of the most powerful institution in Europe rested on a single theological foundation that ordinary human beings could not reach God on their own. Remove that foundation, and the whole structure collapses. If the divine already lives inside every human being, there is no need for a priest to mediate confession, no need to buy an indulgence, no need for the church at all as the sole gateway to salvation. Those aren't theological questions. Those are questions about money power and control over entire civilizations. And this is exactly why Gibson cannot show this Christ in a softened form. The minute audiences see it, something shifts, something that doesn't shift back. What he is about to put on screen is a journey the Ethiopian Bible mapped in architectural detail in a text that almost did not survive. The seven heavens. Remember Gibson's words on Rogan. Other realms watching the angels fall, moving through hell. He was not speaking in metaphor. He was describing a journey the ascension of Isaiah had already mapped in precise detail nearly 2,000 years earlier. No other filmmaker has ever touched it. Picture Abhagarama again. Monks in his tradition were copying this exact text by oil lamp, preserving something the wider Christian world would soon be told was apocryphal. They kept writing. Anyway, the ascension of Isaiah dates to the late 1st or early 2nd century, making it contemporary with parts of the New Testament itself. It takes the prophet Isaiah on a guided journey through 7 distinct levels of heaven. Not a vague spiritual metaphor, a structured architectural account of cosmic realms, each with its own beings, its own laws of reality. In the first heaven, angels oversee the earth. In the second, the movements of stars and celestial bodies are directed. In the third, Isaiah sees paradise itself, including the tree of life. He passes through gates of living firewalks on floors of crystallized starlight, encounters architecture made not of stone, but of pure energy. By the 6th heaven, Isaiah collapses. The splendor of the beings there is too much for a human body to endure. And yet even their glory is only a reflection of something infinitely greater waiting above. Then the 7th heaven, a realm no created being could survive by nature. Isaiah beholds the Beloved One, a figure of radiant authority poised to descend into human existence. Here is where the text becomes astonishing. At each level of his descent, Christ deliberately veils his own divinity so the beings there can perceive him. In the 6th heaven, he appears as a being of the 6th order. In the 5th, as one of the 5th. His brilliance dimming at every stage, not because his power fades, but because he chooses to restrain it. Layer by layer, he wraps himself in limitation, the infinite compressing itself into the finite. This is a surgical act of self-conceited level by level across multiple dimensions with total intentionality. At every stage of descent, he is choosing to be smaller. Not because he has to, because the mission requires it. By the time he arrives in Bethlehem as a human infant, even the lower angels see nothing but a child, completely unaware of the cosmic presence hidden within that small, fragile body. Only God the Father and the Spirit recognize who he truly is. And this is where it gets strange. The crucifixion in this framework is not what Western Christianity has described. It is a cosmic rupture, the very source of life. The being whose word sustains every atom of creation is experiencing death. Jesus was severely beaten before crucifixion. This not only weakened him, but subjected him to severe blood loss and circulatory shock. Not metaphorically. Actually, the origin point of existence has gone silent. That silence reshapes reality itself. The darkness at the moment of the crucifixion was not weather. The earthquake was not geological. These were the physical symptoms of creation reacting to the death of the thing that was holding it together. The entire universe registered what had happened, because the entire universe had been built by the being who had just stopped breathing. Then the resurrection, not a body returning to life. the most powerful being in existence reclaiming his full glory after willingly confining that power within human flesh. Every layer of limitation torn away simultaneously. The disciples who saw it were not comforted, they were undone. The guards at the tomb collapsed from proximity to something their bodies had no category for. The stone did not roll away because someone moved it. It moved because what was behind it could no longer be contained. That is the resurrection Gibson says he wants to film. And the ascension of Isaiah charted exactly this sequence nearly 2,000 years before he was born. He is not imagining something new. He is recovering something ancient. The only question left is what that recovery does to everyone who sees it. The living word in Ethiopian churches today. Gibson's cinematic vision already exists as living theology. Christ is known as Exi Abher, Lord of the universe, both majestic and gentle, fire and light. Ethiopian icons depict him with dark skin and deep penetrating eyes, surrounded by radiant gold halos, fully human and unmistakably cosmic at the same time. In Western tradition, Jesus offers comfort first. In the Ethiopian vision, awe comes first. You recognize the magnitude of who stands before you. Then comes the comfort. Picture this. In the Ethiopian manuscripts, Christ's miracles are not acts of kindness. They are restorations of cosmic order. When he stills the storm, the wind recognizes its creator and falls silent. When he walks on water, the water remembers the voice that called it into being and lifts him in reverence. When he raises the dead, he is commanding life itself to return to where it belongs. I built this, and it still knows my voice. And here is where it gets strange. Christ is described in these texts as the living word, the vibration through which reality itself exists. Light, sound, matter, and life all flow through him, sustained by his presence from moment to moment. A concept written nearly 2,000 years ago that sounds strikingly close to modern physics, describing reality as energy, frequency, and vibration. This is the real deal. A piece of Ethiopians' Christian heritage preserved in the very language the church has guarded for centuries. If that word were ever withdrawn, creation would not collapse. It would simply cease to be instantly. That is what Mel Gibson has been reading. That is what he has been carrying for 20 years. He openly calls himself deeply Christian. He says he trusts the Bible completely. And yet the vision he keeps describing Christ, moving through multiple dimensions, confronting fallen angels, shattering the barriers between heaven, earth, and hell, does not come from the standard Western Bible. It comes from the Ethiopian one. The gentle Jesus of Renaissance art was always a revision. The blazing Christ of Enoch, the cosmic descender of Isaiah, the living word who holds reality together by the sound of his voice. That was the original, written down first, preserved longest, suppressed most aggressively, and for 17 centuries, billions of people never knew he existed. If Gibson's film stays true to the vision he has described, audiences in 2027 will not meet the familiar Western Jesus. They will encounter a Christ closer to the Ethiopian tradition than anything Christianity has ever put on a screen. A being of cosmic fire who chose to compress himself into human flesh, walk through suffering and death in real time, and then detonate back into full divine radiance in a moment that shook the physical structure of reality itself. Think about what Abba Gorema could not have known. He copied by oil lamp in a cell carved into a cliff face for readers he would never meet in a century he could not imagine. He believed the pages mattered enough to hunch over them until his hands cramped. Now, 1,600 years later, a filmmaker with a $100 million budget and 20 years of obsession is standing in Cinecitta Studios in Rome, building a film from the exact tradition that Monk risked his life to preserve. The monks never knew his name, but they saved what he needed. If one version of Christ could be buried so completely that billions never knew he existed, What else is sitting in those cliff-faced monasteries right now still waiting to be opened? Drop your answer in the comments below. And if you want to be here when the next forbidden scripture gets cracked open, subscribe now and turn on notifications, because there are books in those monasteries that make the Book of Enoch look like a warm-up. Books about the nature of angels, books about what existed before the flood,